Here at Rick's farm, and the electrons are sent to the grid with my name on it because I live a mile away. I started driving electric cars in 2012 and bought a Nissan Leaf, and of course I was asked by other folks, well, you're charging it from the dirty grid. And then I started investigating solar and had Revision Energy come up and look at my house, which is in the woods. And it made more sense to ask around and basically have a mini solar farm of one. And I talked to Farmer Rick, who had this corner of his field available that he didn't really store hay on, close to a telephone pole that Scott will finally take a picture of. So basically I talked to CMP and I put in a pedestal that had my meter enclosure on it and found this great company in Vermont that made trackers, and I just was stunned by how much sense it made to me. I've grown up as a juggler and an acrobat in my life, so to think that a array would move and follow the sun like a sunflower, it just really sold it for me. So less panels because it's moving. It stays perpendicular all the time to the sun. Has a little anemometer on top to keep it safe, so to speak. On windy days, it'll go to flat, so it won't act like a sail. At night it goes flat, and then in the morning it resets itself way over to the east and all the way to sunset to the west. So I put this up with Revision people. They let me participate, and I was so amazed and had such a great time with finally making power from the sun that I ended up doing it for a living for the last 7 years. Let's take a look on the other side.
Awesome.
It was a pretty simple installation in that we made a jig to build the frame on, and the frame is made of these Galvy steel pieces. When you get around, you see it's almost like an erector set. The components of the tracker would be a concrete base that goes in the ground, or a helical pile and a riser. It's like a large mushroom, actually upside down, and then the mast gets bolted to it. This is the disconnect for the electricity coming in and out, because it does take electricity to run the tracker itself. It runs on hydraulics. The top part that we lifted up with a excavator after we set the mast up, the top part's referred to as the can that the inverter sits on. The two hydraulic motors. One makes it rotate and the other is the piston that gives you the tilt. But it really did all just bolt together on this jig we made, and then we lifted up the frame, empty of course, and set it into the saddle of the can, and then populated it by actually putting panels up on one side and then flipping the whole thing and populating it with the other panels. Then we set the last piston, turned it on, and if you come over here, this has all been worked out by the folks in Vermont. That's why I'm wearing their t-shirt. They gave me one. I've put up almost 100 trackers in the last 7 years. The control box is that tan box, and in there is an actual GPS service where this tracker finds itself on the earth through the satellites and runs a different algorithm every day, because every day is different. So once it finds itself on the earth, there's magnets inside the can, and that control box makes it move. It really, if we stay here long enough, we'll see the incremental movement of 6 inches every 8 minutes to keep it perpendicular to the sun. There's a hydraulic motor that moves the pistons, and a hydraulic motor on top that has a worm gear in it that makes it preset. So this is a dual axis tracker. And then in the distance, I'm sure you can see in the back of Scott filming, is a ground mount made by the same company, because they're branching out. The tracker is an expensive machine, guaranteed for 10 years, but it is a machine. And we've had really minimal service calls on them. They really tried to build it so it was bomb-proof. This is just the meter enclosure, and it's sending electricity to the tracker because the actual motors take a little bit of electricity to run, not much. Then all the electricity that you've produced comes back here and spins out on that meter that basically has my name on it that goes to my account. So all my neighbors get to use solar electricity, and since I'm a mile away, I probably don't get any of it per se. The folks in Vermont, All Earth Renewables decided to make a ground mount with the parts that they already have built trackers with. So it has the same rail situation. They took their main beams and divided them in half. Their engineers built some poles that are also Galvy, and this device goes up without digging a hole except for the trench, which is pretty darn cool. Each one of the bays is made to support 12 panels. These panels are unique in that it's something that just happened in the last couple of years. They're called bifacial, and if Scott's getting a good picture of it, the sun actually comes through because there's not a backing sheet on the panels. It's actually clear and the light comes through all through it. And the reason I put a white tarp under here is that they say that, folks, this is an LG 400 watt bifacial panel, that you can make another 30% reflecting back up to this side of the piece of silicone. So for a ground mount or for a tracker or for a pole mount like at Jesse Wall's, the idea that you would get more reflection off the ground, or in winter when this would have been all white and snowy and you get reflection back up, it's a fantastic idea. Why have a backing plate on a panel when the reflection possibilities are immense? So this just happened. I put this up because I drive 2 electric cars now. Well, Alyssa drives a Tesla Model S that was a used vehicle, pre-owned, and the Tesla Model X takes up a lot of electricity when you're charging these things. So I added the array. All Earth was interested in getting into the business of ground mounts, and I decided to put the best panels that are made on it so that I can read off this inverter what it's making versus what the tracker's making. On a good day, the tracker can make 65 to 70 kWh, and the ground mount makes about 25.
What's a kWh, Fred?
Kilowatt hours. So that's what your home runs on. Most homes use 30 to 35 per day, but when you start charging electric cars, that's your fuel source. So I don't go to gas stations anymore. I just get fuel from the sun. To get back to Solar 101, is these panels are made of silicone, and the electrons get fired up by the sun and they move along the paths. There's little wires in here and bus bars, and they are making DC current, and they come down and over into the inverter, and the inverter changes it to AC current. And that's what is spooling up on this one. Actually, you need to have the lights come up, and it says today's total is 6.4 kilowatt hours, kWh, because it's kind of cloudy out today and we're in the middle of the day. It tells me that the grid is hooked up and running on 240 volts. It tells me how much CO2 I've saved, which is 75,000 pounds of CO2 has not gone into the atmosphere.
It tells you all of that?
It does, just on this little screen there. It gives me an E-total that I've done 44,000 kilowatt hours from this inverter to my house over the last 9 years.
It's a sunny boy.
It is. The other one I'm using on the tracker is an ABB, and they have certain sizes. This was on my original tracker, and it's a 5 kW inverter. This system behind me is a 4.8 feeding it. The tracker is a 7.3 total capacity, and the inverter is a 7.6. So you try and size the inverter to where it's going to be bigger than what is going to be produced.
So you mentioned that you don't actually use this power.
Yes, because
So what's the point here?
Well, I get credit for it with net metering.
How's that work?
Yeah, how's that work? It's a mystery. So I send kilowatts to the grid with my name on it because the meter on the back side of this tells CMP what I have generated. And I've made this handshake with CMP and given them a fee up front that I'm going to generate electricity. They agree to take my kilowatts, and they agree to give me back a kilowatt for a kilowatt when I need it in October, November, December as the days get shorter. So all summer long, I make a bank just like I bank money. I make a bank of kilowatts that CMP keeps track of, and I watch too because I have a method of keeping track of, there's data that goes out to the internet that shows me what I've made. So I keep this rolling bank of kilowatts, using so much in the summer. I don't use as many because it's lighter out. As winter starts coming along, I get those kilowatts back, and that's how net metering works. CMP is in a 1-for-1 ratio, so I make them a kilowatt and send it, and they give it back to me. The only charge I have is to have a meter, which is $13.58 to use their lines, and I also have a meter at my house, which is $13.58 a month. But after that, I really have no electric bill, and I haven't since 2012. So you have to factor in by driving cars and having your fuel be all electric. And all my power tools are electric, my lawnmower is electric, and that I've stopped buying fossil fuels, so you've ended that part of your life and easily gone on to creating enough energy to run your whole home for the next 30 years.
That's awesome. Thanks for the tour, Fred.
Yeah, you bet.
Well, thanks for the tour, Fred.
Yeah, go for it. It's really been easy to do. And every day it's sunny outside, it feels fantastic because you're making something and saving the earth.
Awesome.